Hey there, everyone. It's GG Sober Sun. April 5th. AA thought from the day, for the day, from the 24-hour-a-day book. People often ask, what makes the AA program work? One of the answers is that AA works because it gets people away from themselves as the center of their universe. And it teaches them to rely more on the fellowship of others and on the strength from God. Forgetting ourselves in fellowship, prayer, and working with others is what makes the AA program work. Are these things keeping me sober? Well, I could do all that. It's not the only thing that makes it work, but we're all, for the most part, the people who stick around are the people who are aiming up for sure. But if they're not sober, you got to become a member of the no matter what club. We're going to keep that plug in the jug no matter what. Right? That forces everything else. That makes sure that we are, practicing the principles of the program. Otherwise, we go back to drink, right? If we get the gift of desperation to the point where we are willing to try anything to keep the plug in the jug, then we start doing these other things. And the way it's stated in this reading kind of makes it sound like forgetting ourselves in fellowship, losing ourselves in fellowship, so to speak, in the process of fellowship, prayer, and working with others is what makes the AA program work. Yeah. I suppose alcoholics can do that while they're still drinking. I can't imagine what a hopeless state of mind and body that would be if I'm involved in fellowship at, AA meetings and I'm still drinking on the sly kind of thing. I've known a few people that were in that condition, but I wouldn't want to experience that for sure. But it definitely gets me out of myself as the center of the universe, right? We had a newcomer this morning. He hadn't had a drink in a few days, and this was and this is rare these days, that it was his very first ever AA meeting. And talking with him a little bit afterward, I found out that his wife of 15 years passed away not too long ago, and I can't imagine, what that must feel like. And how much drinking, but I can't imagine how much drinking I could justify in, going through that. But I've lived sober through some tragic family deaths. And, I'd never even been to a funeral until I got sober in my life. And so, I came in just to stop drinking, but I've been given all these tools that help me deal with life, right? I always thought, if I can just stop drinking, everything else is figure-outable kind of thing. You know what I mean? But I've proven time and time again, if I'm not coming to AA and being reminded of the simple kit of spiritual tools that I've been given, I'm likely to act in the same dysfunctional ways that I did when I was drinking, or at least childish, you know. So it's better if I keep coming back. Avoid thinking that I need to be poofed and never have to come to AA again, when in fact that's where I find my purpose in life, right? That the dark past is the greatest possession I have, that in God's hands, right? So that's hugely important as well, that I stay plugged in with God. I don't know how people stay sober. I heard a couple of guys at the end of the table complaining about someone using too much religious language during their share, and I'm like, the book says to be quick to see where religious people are right and to put use what they have to offer. So they're like, there's no place for that in here. Man, sorry. No. Should be plenty of place for that in here. It was the notion of the founders that without God, we're drunk. And so, however that manifests itself, and if people with long-term continuous sobriety still have a problem with that, I find that problematic, especially if newcomers overhear that. Anyway, a gripe. I will pray for them and for myself. Meditation for the day. God is the great interpreter of one human personality to another. Even personalities who are nearest together have much in their natures that remains a sealed book to each other, and only as God enters and controls their lives are the mysteries of each revealed to the other. Each personality is so different. God alone understands perfectly the language of each and can interpret between the two. Here we find the miracles of change and the true interpretation of life. Wow, that's deep, and I could probably ponder on that. Sort of meditate on that for a month, about how really personalities, the principle or the tradition of anonymity talks about principles before personalities, and that really drives home a good point. For years I didn't know what that meant. Principles before personalities. What does that mean? And sometimes you get people with very outspoken personalities, who are funny and witty and can captivate people when they speak, but they're not necessarily working the steps. So, their shares may be full of resentment and rationalization and justification for why they shouldn't have to work the steps, which it's not helpful, right? The whole point of the program is to work the steps. So in that respect, I understand, and they may be able to sway people to their stated way of thinking, right? Because as alcoholics, we can say we're for one thing and our actions show we're for something else. But to sort of steer people away from doing the steps or adhering to the traditions is not helpful. I mean, that's not what we're about, and that's not what the fellowship is, or the program is about. So we do have to be mindful of that. And yes, God can put people together that obviously at the tables, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. My buddy used to say, from either we can be from Yale or from jail, we're sitting at the same table talking about the same ideas, emotions, and attitudes that drove our drinking. So, and we have various personalities from all walks of life that can come together, and various age groups that can come together for good. So it's better that we just keep coming back. Prayer for the day. I pray that I may be in the right relationship to God. I pray that God will interpret to me the personalities of other people so that I can understand them and help them. Well, that's kind of suggesting some psychoanalysis, and understanding people's personalities. It's God will reveal what we need to know in order to speak to them. We don't have to try to psychoanalyze them or anything like that, if that's what the author is suggesting. We just trust God, do our own homework by learning more about ourselves. And if you're around AA long enough, you know the typical things that alcoholics will do. For example, I got a buddy, actually the guy who told his story today in my home group. He did this quote that, hey, how do you know an alcoholic's lying? Their lips are moving. We are big on rationalization and justifying our behavior. And if you know that about yourself, right, it's easier to identify it in others and call them on it if necessary. So, to thine own self be true is what is put on our coins, But we get to know other people, we get to know the patterns, It never ceases to amaze me, and I did the same thing, right? If I spot it, I got it. So if there's something in somebody else, that I see, a pattern, right, of behavior that is typical of alcoholics, right, is that we come in, we come to, and then we get a little bit of clarity, and then we think we can, call our own shots, when we are still, and I did the same thing, right? I thought I could, that I only needed 1 or 2 meetings a week. And I didn't realize how much I was selling myself short by doing that. So, but that enables me then to encourage other people, just keep coming back. Just make it a priority. Make meetings a priority in your life, and watch what God can do, right? Watch how your life gets better. And then when I got sober and I saw what a wonderful life sobriety could be, right? And that I could be sober and happy about it, I thought that was it, pretty much. And then, I started getting kind of cocky about my life. But I'm glad I kept the plug in the jug, and I lived through all of that, and could really look back and see that, as a result of sobriety and membership, an active membership in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been given a life beyond my wildest dreams. And they told me that in the early days, and I just thought it was booga booga, hoo-ha. So I'm glad I figured it all out and continue to live and love and learn and grow. So I'll keep coming back. I hope y'all do too. A day at a time. Look up, aim up, rise up.